Hey, church. So we're going to read in 1 Samuel 15. And what we know here in the scriptures, if you read prior to these few verses we're going to read today, is that God had given direct orders through the prophet and priest Samuel to King Saul as he went out to battle. What God had told him was, this is a day that I am bringing my judgment against this country. I want you to fulfill my wishes, and I'm asking you to go in. God's telling him, not asking, he's saying go in and just destroy everything. Don't take anything as plunder. Don't bring anything back. Don't let anything live. This was a day of reckoning. And so what happens then is King Saul leads his army in. They are victorious, but he brings the king back and a bunch of the plunder, the best of what the country had, which God said not to do. So on his journey back, Samuel meets him because God has challenged Samuel already to go and meet him because he knows what King Saul had done. So what we're going to do here is just read the scripture in this interaction. Samuel replied, "What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his word?" So as we look at that, we see that Saul was trying to justify his actions, and he was justifying his actions saying, well, the men brought it back, but the reason we brought it back was to offer it to the Lord, which obviously if it was being offered to the Lord, it should have been done where God said so. And so it was just a cop-out and an excuse for what he was trying to do. It wasn't about actually doing anything for God because he was acting in disobedience, but in the process, sometimes as we listen to that, we can find ourselves justifying our behavior and doing things for God in the context of word only when it's all about self. So let's continue reading that. What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. So the prophet Samuel comes to him and says, look, man, it's not about what you say you're going to do for God. It's what God has said to you. And your actions need to be in line with what God says, not what you think. Even if you try and justify it by a spiritual act, it means nothing because your obedience is what truly matters, because that reveals our heart in our walk with God. It isn't changed, church. It has not changed. What's in our heart will show in our actions, whether we're serving self or we're serving God. And therefore, our obedience to what God says is better than any kind of acts of worship or proclamations from our lips. We've got to live in obedience to what God says in that relationship in which he has established for us through Jesus Christ. So let's be his obedient, submissive church. God bless you today.